You probably have seen those small offices. It's one of the largest companies in the whole world. Protecting them against the risk. Whatever we do, there is always a risk. Hi, here is Markku Wilenius, your traveling futurist. Now, I'm gonna talk something about my experience with Allianz. Allianz is a global financial giant. At its core, it is an insurance company, a German insurance company. But in fact, it's one of the largest companies in the whole world. It operates all around the world, over 70 countries. I got a call somewhere in 2007, 15 years ago, from Allianz, where they wanted someone that has a knowledge about the future studies, the way to approach the future, and also some solid understanding of how the industry works. So they wanted to have a kind of a combination of academic futurist and a person that has been working with the corporate world. And to be honest, Allianz was really not my choice. I had thought of working with very different type of the companies, probably the companies that somewhere in the Silicon Valley doing exciting things about the technology and so forth. I took this invitation because I thought that it would be interesting to look at this global corporation, how it works, and of course help the company to understand better where the future risk and opportunities lie. The reason that they called me at that point was that they had realized many years earlier that world has fundamentally shifted. And the wake-up call came when 9/11 happened. So this great destruction that was caused by hijacking airplane and crashing into the Twin Towers in New York. A company that is working on protecting the possessions of people, liabilities of all kinds, possessions of the companies, protecting them against the risk that is always there. Whatever we do, there is always a risk. The company found itself that they have not really thought about the risks of this type of the magnitude, which is also the risk which is completely human-made. In this case, I would say man-made risk. The fact that it happened and Allianz didn't have any real strategy against this type of the events made them to realize that they have to be much more open about what type of the future might appear behind the corner. After some negotiation, I went in and I started to work with a company. And of course, the first thing for me was to understand what type of the business of insurance is. And as with you, I was mostly just experienced as buying some insurances for my home or for my car of this type of the simple insurances. But the world where I sort of plunged into was the world of how to better evaluate the risk. When I started to work there, I soon found out that there were actually a lot of interesting ideas around how to improve the performance of looking at the possible risks and also possible opportunities. Together with my colleagues, we started to work on that, and we created the kind of the model of operation for the company that enabled to use much more widespread insights and knowledge about what potentially can future bring, and bring it to the top level of the organization's leadership. Soon I also realized that the company, the Allianz itself, was a very old, respected German company of some 100 years old, and it had, as many old companies, it was a bit slow to move and accept the new realities. And in this case, for instance, the reality was that the services was speedily going up to the digital front, but the model that Allianz was used to operate was very much based on the physical interaction of people. So if you have been traveling in Middle Europe, whether it's Germany or France or Italy or Spain, you probably have seen those small offices in the small villages as in the bigger cities with the name Allianz, and those have been the offices that traditionally people went where they had any concerns about the insurance or other type of financial questions. That sort of determined the path. I realized that, okay, something else has to happen as well, so I became also a part in the company where we started to look at that, how these new digital models can operate that help people to use the services regardless where they are or what time of the day or the week it is. And that was a sort of a long process, but we really started. The other part was that it came to the company quite clear that we need to move more towards understanding what the real societal issues and problems are and help to somehow to contribute there. And we created the first sort of units inside the Allianz that were more focused on contributing to the society. And thirdly, there was, of course, the issue of financial crisis. The financial crisis came 2008, a bit less than a year after I had joined. It was a crashing smash to the economies. Everything went sort of alert mode when this infamous Lehman Brothers investment company was brought down by the financial crisis. That was also the realization that we need to have a more kind of a fundamental perspective of how these things can happen without we as companies, particularly in the financial sector, being able to sufficiently do some precautionary measures not to let that happen. For me, personally, it became a kind of a turning point when I started to look at these dynamic long-term ways of economies and technologies and societies that seem to be the key determinants to understand why these crashes come every now and then. Because of course this financial crisis that started 2008 was not the first of its kind. There were oil crises, the first and second oil crisis in the 1970s. There was a Great Depression in the late 1920s, and so forth and so forth. So there had been this kind of a severe crisis before, made me to think that there is a certain kind of a pattern. And of course I was not the only one who has kind of found it. There have been a lot of theorizing around that, but it helped me to put in place the type of the experience that I had with the financial crisis, since I happened to be on the first kind of a front row, being senior vice president of the global financial giant. The real challenge for me as I continued to work there was really how to help this kind of a mindset shift, the shift of the belief system. Because we started to see in those days the type of the change that has become very loud today, which is that we need to change as societies. We need to bring in the sustainability as a target in a very different way. We need to change our energy systems in particular, but we need to start to look more how each of the company and corporation can really contribute to the world to make it better, instead of just looking for their self-interest and the interest of the shareholders. which has been by and large the liturgy, the official doctrine of the corporate world. That is what has happened, and I also see that the Allianz has greatly changed. If you look today what the current CEO, Oliver Bäte, is talking about, he's very much emphasizing that we need to do this radical shift, understanding how our economies operate. And of course, Germany is experienced a very heavy reminder of wrong kind of dependencies by being too dependent on the Russian oil and gas, and now being in a great trouble when they're trying to shift their sources of supply. This Allianz experience was for me very important for several reasons. The first reason was that it sort of represented the type of the corporate culture, which I believe is very much sort of a dominant around the world, and where the key problem lies that how to engage people in a better way inside the corporate, so that they don't feel themselves to be alienated, but they feel themselves to be engaged and be part of the larger process, and that they are doing something meaningful and significant, and that they have enough freedom to do so. And this is much easier to be said than done in the companies that these old giants that easily kind of build very rigid structures and procedures with a good purpose that they would be the ones that help them to keep on the track, but in the process they actually become a bit like golden cages where people feel a bit suffocated. My role as a futurist in the company was really to help to open up their eyes for the different type of the future, and to make them to realize that the future will be very different, because the driving forces that are shaping our societies, pushing us to realize that we all need to have a huge sort of sustainability leap. And in fact, when you look at the people themselves who are working, particularly the younger generation, they very much already think that way. And it is with the corporate world so that the more people align their own values with the values of the corporate, with the company, the more they feel that they are engaged. If they think that they are carrying themselves very different kind of values than what the company represents, they start to feel alienated, they start to feel demotivated, and they're not able to do their best for the company. Also, it was very important for me to realize that when I was working with a company, there was also something larger there. It was not just the one big global company, but it actually representation of the insurance and financial industry. And particularly when it comes to the insurances, this is a very long-term business. And usually when you build your own individual insurance contracts, quite often you do that for the long term. So the business model itself is based on a very long term, which is again very different to what the most of the businesses are based on, which are more like a short term. So that's where you can find that there is a lot of interest for long-term insight, long-term ideas, and bring it to the fore in such a way that helps again their clients to be more future orientated and more, if necessary, risk averse. So all in all, the experience was very useful, interesting, sometimes very hard too, but all in all very exciting, and I'm really grateful to have been able to have this experience with that global giant financial company called Allianz. Subscribe to my channel and see other related videos and learn more about the future.